Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Pulse with BP. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. Folks, I'm so excited today to be joined by Kelly Saco, the Fox Sports reporter for the Marlins. She's also a former athlete and graduate of the Syracuse University. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely, Billy. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I want to start off with first, how have you been handling this pandemic? I mean, this is something that has impacted our lives both professionally and personally the last year. So how have you been handling this last year?
Honestly, probably the same way everyone else has, right? Trying to take it one day at a time, breathing into a lot of paper bags. I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's just an adjustment, right? Everything in life is just that. You have to learn how to adjust. You mentioned my sports career there, and then you make adjustments on the field. You got to make adjustments in life too. So there are good days and there are not so great days, but hey, got to keep moving forward.
And like I mentioned, you are a graduate of Syracuse University, Newhouse. You also played softball there. When did you know, though, that you wanted to become a sportscaster?
Oh goodness, I wish I had some amazing story about I thought of this, I wanted to do this since I was a little kid and been talking into microphones and watching all these reporters. No, I had absolutely no idea. The one thing I did know for quite a long time was I wanted to be involved in sports. I had played a ton of different sports my entire life and I just loved it. And being an athlete was really just a huge part of my life, something that I enjoyed, something that I thought taught you a lot about life. I thought originally that I wanted to go into like sports medicine, but blood makes me faint. So that had to switch gears real quick. When I was offered a scholarship and accepted a scholarship to Syracuse University, my mother was the one who said, you love sports and you love to talk. So why don't you try being a reporter or broadcaster? They've got a great school for it. Give it a shot. It was completely out of my comfort zone, but it was a challenge. And I like that it was a challenge. So I said, okay, I like that this is a very difficult school to get into. I like that I'll be pushing myself in something I'm not very comfortable in, which is being on camera and talking in front of people. And I said, yeah, I'm going to give it a shot and see what happens. And I ended up loving it.
So what was your journey like to get from Syracuse to the Marlins?
It was interesting. The word networking is a terrifying one. At least I found it terrifying when all my friends, make sure you network. I'm like, what is networking? I mean, this is awful. And it's really just working hard and being nice to people. So my parents didn't go down the same paths as I did. My mom actually went to Syracuse University as a swimmer. She ended up graduating from University of Miami. She transferred. My father didn't go down the college route, but he owns his own business. So they didn't have the same path that I was taking. So I really wasn't sure about like, oh wait, I'm supposed to get internships. I'm supposed to do these things. It just was new to me. So I didn't get my first internship until summer leading into my senior year. I got an internship with NBC6, the local station here, interned at the university with the athletic department and pretty much did as much as I could once I realized what I was supposed to do. And I ended up getting an internship with the Olympics with NBC at 30 Rock in New York City. And I was just kind of working my butt off there. And there was a guy who was a producer from, I think, the Rangers. I think it was the New York Rangers. Don't quote me. But he was working alongside me doing the same thing I was doing. And he asked me a couple days before the internship ending, he's like, Kelly, so what are you going to do? I go, oh my God, I guess I'm going to go home and try to get a job and be a grown-up. And he goes, you're from Miami, right? I was like, yeah. He goes, I know someone who works at Fox Sports Florida, produces for the Panthers. Do you want me to put you in touch? I'm like, yes, please. So that guy put me in touch with the coordinating producer at Fox Sports Florida, which is about to turn into Valley Sports Florida. There's rebrand. Anywho, so I spoke with the CP, the coordinating producer, who happened to be looking for a production assistant. A week later, I had an interview with him. At that interview, I was very honest. I said, hey, I want to learn. If this isn't a place that I can learn, and this is my goal, if this isn't a place I can learn to get to my goal, I don't want to be here. And that's pretty much, I flat out told him that at 22, where I got the guts to say that's still beyond me. But he's liked it because he hired me the next day. And I was true to my word. That's why I tell everybody, listen, you can talk the talk, but you got to walk the walk. I said I wanted to be here to learn. I said I wanted to be here to grow, which is what I did. I spent as much time as I could with other reporters, with editors, with producers, learning their tasks, not just the goal that I wanted to be, which was being on air, but learning the behind the scenes stuff, how to produce a show, how to edit a show, and everything along the lines of that, which really set me up in the future, and also shooting stand-ups whenever I went out with reporters. I had my stuff prepared. I asked the camera guy, hey, can I stay a little bit later with you or come a little bit earlier with you? And they were amazing, one of which I still work with him today. And I've like refused to work with anyone else. I love him so much. He was supportive of me since day one. And so I just really worked really hard to build my reel and to learn as much as I could. And I know this is long-winded, but I feel like these are very important steps for everybody, especially people in your position, because that's how much it took for me to get there. And I was able to build a reel. The Marlins were looking for an in-game host about a year into my production assistant job. I had met people at the Marlins through a kids show that we are working on. And I auditioned. I got that job as the in-game host. So I worked as the in-game host with them. University of Miami happened to see me. They asked me if I could do the same for them. I did the same for them. And Fox kind of kept an eye on me. And a couple years later, 4 years down the road, they asked if I could come back to Fox as a digital reporter, which I worked really hard creating my own segments, unique, programming, doing our broadcast. We had a thing called the Fox Minute. I did in English and Spanish. And then when I felt the time was right, I said, hey, listen, this is my goal. It was to be a sideline reporter with baseball. I'm like, are there opportunities to fill in? Maybe the reporters aren't available for whatever reason. They're like, yeah, absolutely. So that's the very long-winded answer as to how I got to what I'm doing.
And you get to do so many different things. I mean, you're a sideline reporter, you host Marlins All Access, Marlins Clubhouse. So you really have the opportunity to get to do a whole lot of different things in your position.
Correct. And I think it's because of all the experience that I got as a production assistant that led me to that. I made sure, again, I wasn't just focused on my goal. I was focused on the goal always, but not just focused on being on-air talent. Because if you have more things that you could bring to the table, more doors open for you. So I really focused on, hey, let me learn how to produce. Let me learn how to edit. And because I know how to do those things is one of the reasons why I'm hosting and producing a show called Marlins Clubhouse, because I learned as a production assistant, 22, 23 years old, how to produce a kids show, which is what Marlins Clubhouse ended up turning into. So yes, I like to do different things too, because I've got, I get the ADHD, so I get very distracted. I like to do a lot of different things. It keeps me going. So yes, that's that.
So how do you prepare? I'm really curious about your sideline gig. How do you prepare stories for 162 games? I mean, it's a long season. You've got to find unique stories, every day. So how do you find the time and be able to prepare unique stories for a 162 game season?
Well, luckily I share the responsibility of all those 162 games. So Jessica Blaylock is the other girl who also does the sideline reporting with me. So lucky for us, we get a little bit of a break, but yes, it is daunting. There are a lot of games. Even just doing half the schedule is more games than other sports usually do. And those games are 10 games in a row, sometimes without a day off. So trying to take it one day at a time. I very much like to look ahead. I try to read as much as I can when I find a story that I might be able to tell a little later on in the season when we see a certain team, for instance. I save it, either text it to myself or I have Google Docs. I'm a big Google Docs person right now. So I have like a Google Docs thing where I like write all my stories. I mean, nationals, make sure to talk about these things and so on and so forth. So it's a lot of reading, a lot of social media stalking. You can find a lot of things about the players' personalities and what they're into and their hobbies outside of baseball and social media, and just reading as much as I can.
So I'm always curious, as a sideline reporter, what are you doing during the game when you're not delivering one of your sideline hits?
Paying attention to the game, because throughout the game, you have to just keep eyes on everything, because at the end of the game, you're going to be interviewing the manager, you're going to be interviewing the players. So what I like to do is I always keep score. I'm a big keeping score person. I always keep score as things go on during the game. I always write little notes. I have all the starting players on another sheet of paper, and I write notes about them before the game starts. Maybe this guy is streaking, maybe this guy is struggling, whatever it might be. Maybe this guy is, hit short of 300 or some milestone, something like that. And then I pay attention to what they're doing throughout the game. Someone has a nice play, I write it down. Ooh, nice play in the second, da 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 da. Or someone had a really long at bat that then set up an RBI situation for the guy behind him. I'll write that down. So throughout the game, I'm watching the game. I'm watching to see what the guys do, and I'm setting up my post-game interviews.
And do you feel like you have an advantage over other sideline reporters because you played softball and because you are bilingual as well?
Absolutely. I definitely think it helps. I think that I've definitely had a lot of players tell me when they're explaining something, but because you played softball. So I think that that helps. I know everyone works very hard on the sidelines, whether they played softball before or whether they're bilingual. But I definitely think it helps because I think it helps me relate to the players because I've been in those situations where I've been slumping. I've been in those situations where I've been injured and things along the lines of that. So I think that helps relate. It helps to relate to, I understand more of the nitty gritty part of the game. The mechanics are really baseball-y part of the game because they're so similar to the sport that I played. And as for speaking Spanish, absolutely, 100%. I mean, think about it. It's easier to talk in our native language. So when you have somebody who's, the players, they try so hard and they work so hard to speak English. So I think they appreciate when I try to speak their language and try to relate for them and give them that comfort level.
I'm curious, what are some of your favorite places to travel in the big leagues?
My goodness, I haven't been to too many yet because the majority of my games, the way our kind of schedule has split up in the past, has been I've taken the majority of the home games. But of the places I've been, I love Chicago. I love Chicago. I haven't been to Wrigley. I covered our series against the White Sox last year, but Chicago was great. And San Diego. I love San Diego. Petco Park was great. The weather's awesome. So those are two places I've really enjoyed so far.
And do you have a chance to interact with fans during, the games, or are you really more focused on your job and don't have time for that? I mean, how do you find that balance during the game?
Oh goodness. First of all, I love the fans. I got to know a lot of them through my 5 years as an in-game host. So I always try to make time for them. And when I'm a little busy and I don't have time, at least give them a wave or tell them hi. They're always very understanding. They know I'm working. But yeah, from the camera well, I don't know how it's going to work this year because of COVID and everything, but from the camera well, I'm able to talk to them and I'm able to run through the stands and such. So it is a balance though. You're right. Because I am trying to focus on my game, but they're very understanding and they're wonderful.
And speaking of balance, how do you find the work-life balance? I mean, baseball season is long. You do only half the games, but it's still a grind. So how do you find the time to really find that work-life balance?
That one's hard, honestly. I think I still trying to figure it out sometimes because there's always more work that you can do. There's this ongoing joke, and this is more for the radio games that I do. We joke about how you do all this work and you're only going to use 10% of it, but you never know what 10% you're going to need. So even going into, I did a couple spring training games on the radio, and even going into those games, I'm like, there's always more work I can do. I'm like, I've been working all day long or all week long. Like there's still always more things to learn. So I think it just kind of gets to the point where you have to find a balance that works for you to get the work done that you can. And then say, hey, just like I scheduled an interview, I need to schedule time for myself. I'm going to go golf, or I'm going to go have dinner with my friends, or I'm going to go watch a movie with my family, whatever it is. That's something I learned, I think, what was it, like 2017, 2018, because I found myself getting really overwhelmed by the amount of work I had to do. I'm like, I have to literally schedule time for me. And it's important because if you're not happy in your life, then you're not going to be working to the best of your ability. And always remember, and I think that this is hard sometimes, work is what you do. It's not who you are. I have a lot of pride in what I do as a reporter, but I'm like, it's not who I am. So I think just kind of knowing that I don't just fully identify myself as my job.
I was curious because you have a chance to get to know these players in more personal settings, and to many people like me and other fans, they just seem like celebrities and larger than life figures. But how do you describe these players behind the scenes when you get to know them in more personal settings?
Oh, they're just like us. I know you hear it too, but listen, they're just like us. They're humans. They have their families and they have their lives and they have their passions and their hobbies outside of sports. So that's for my Marlins Clubhouse show. That's really what we try to focus on. We try to take whatever the players are interested in, whatever hobby it might be outside of baseball, and we take them to go do that, or something that they might, out of their comfort zone, but they've always wanted to try. So yeah, they're players just like us. And I think something that we need to remember sometimes as reporters or as fans is that they are human. So they're going to make mistakes. They're going to strike out. They're going to make errors. These guys are human beings. They're not machines. So I know that just kind of in the world that we live in, everyone kind of puts them, looks at them as superheroes in a lot of ways they can be, but got to remember they're just like us. They're humans.
And I wanted to ask you a broader question about women in sports media. You know, we're seeing more progress now with people like Lisa Byington and Melanie Newman and Beth Mowins, obviously in play-by-play roles. So it seems like we're getting more opportunities, equal opportunities for women to be involved in sports broadcasting and things like play-by-play. What do you think about that? Do you think we're making progress with that?
Oh, absolutely. I think you see it in the numbers. You know, I too am doing about 30 games, I think, for Marlins radio, where I'm the color analyst. And yeah, I think that just with numbers, like you're making more progress. So yeah, absolutely.
Biggest differences between sideline reporting and color and analyst? I mean, any different way in terms of how you approach it with prep or anything like that?
Yes. Color analyst, you have to, I don't want to say you have to know more, but you have to get more in depth about both teams. You have to know more of the nitty gritty about every player. With sideline reporting, you can more stick to kind of your topics, your stories in your team. You are going to tell stories about the other team as well, but generally speaking, post game, you're interviewing your team and that's it. You're not going and talking too in depth about the visiting team, because you're targeting that towards your audience. And yes, you are as well in the radio, but for instance, you're talking for 3+ hours on the radio and you're not stopping. With sideline interviews, you're lucky if you get 3 hits a game, 3 to 5, I think was the most, probably 5 or 6 hits a game I've gotten is the most, but as little as 2. And you got to remember that those stories, you have to tell a really good story in a really short amount of time. So 30 seconds to a minute, you're telling a story. So with sideline, you are telling a story short, quick, concise, and at very different times of the game, and then preparing for your post-game interviews. Whereas radio, you've got to find topics to talk about throughout the entire game and about every single player, right? So sideline, I could pick, like today I want to talk about this player, today I want to talk about this player, and I want to tell this story. So I'm prepared for those stories. Now things pop up, of course, and then I'm like preparing for my post game. So I still have a general idea how the guys are doing, but I don't spend as much time on the other team. So there's just a lot more prep work for radio.
And prior to your sideline hits, do you coordinate with the play-by-play and color guy to make sure that they don't step on your shoes? Because I have to imagine that relationship is pretty important too.
It's funny that you say that, because I was talking to our play-by-play guy, Paul Severino, about that. And in the past, I had really only set my story ideas to the producer, and the producer would kind of relay it back. And I told our play-by-play guy this year, I'm like, you know what, would it be helpful in any way if I include you on those emails so you just kind of know? And he does a great job, and he's always prepared. So he's usually able to just kind of add to whatever I have to say. So I'm like, you know what, let me let you know. And I have in the past, but now I'm actually making more of a point to like include him on these emails. So he's like, hey, okay, this is what she's looking to talk to. So he could either like lead me in a certain way or avoid talking about that topic.
And Kelly, I know we've already talked about it when you talked about your journey, but what's your advice to aspiring sportscasters trying to make it in this business? I mean, you know better than anyone, it takes a lot of work. It's very competitive, and especially now we still have to deal with the realities of the COVID pandemic. So what's your advice to young guys and girls like me who want to make it in this field?
Oh, goodness. Okay, a lot. One, okay, where am I going to start? I'm going to start here. One, intern where you want to work. That's how you find out what you want to do and if that lifestyle is for you. I interned at local news. That was my very first internship ever, and I had a great experience, and I love the people, and I still talk to them to this day. But the local news kind of format wasn't something I was as interested in. And I found that out pretty early. I said, you know, I don't really like this schedule. I don't really like the format of this. I think the people there are incredible and they do a great job, but it just wasn't going to fit the lifestyle I had pictured for me. So I think that's something that a lot of people have trouble with, is they get into sports and they don't understand the lifestyle that goes along with it, which is, hey, especially as young college kids, right, and coming out of college, you want to go hang out with your friends, you want to go out, you want to do this and that. Guess what? You're working weekends, you're working nights, your days off are now Tuesday and Wednesday, or Monday and Wednesday. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, is this what I signed up for? Yes, it is. So I knew pretty early on, because I've worked in, I was a sports, I was an athlete my entire life. I was in sports my whole life. I very much understand and get the team type of schedule. So baseball, everyone thinks is so daunting, 162 games, this and that. but I've been used to that my whole life because it's a lifestyle that I've had. I'm like, yeah, I have no problem working my butt off for 6, 7 months, 8 months, and then having this amount of time off. So it's make sure it fits your lifestyle, because again, your mental health, your life outside of your job is very, very important. That's something that you need to remember. So that's one. 2, if you decide, yes, this is industry for me, that's the lifestyle I want. Great, fantastic. And it sounds cliche, you have to work your butt off. No one's going to hand you anything. And like, no one, how do I say this? You're not entitled to anything, right? Like, no one's going to just give you a handout. Okay. You have to work your butt off for it. That's like what I did. I mean, there's a lot of times I did things for free. I took internships. I shadowed people, this and that. You have to put in the work. And this is an industry that you very much have to put in the work. Put in the work, work your butt off. You can't say, hey, I want this, and then not put in the work to go get that. People aren't just going to give things to you. So work, experience and reps, especially if you want to be on camera, experience and reps. Oh my goodness. I look at my stuff from Syracuse. I'm like, how did I ever make it? My goodness, because I did it over and over and over and over again. And I showed it to people. So what can I do better? And I worked on those things, and I did it again and again and again and again. So find those internships, or go off on your own with a camera. Hey, this is a great time media wise, because you can do this on your phone. You can do this with an iPad. Just set it up and go. And everyone's got these like beautiful ring lights nowadays. Back in my day, people didn't really have those things, right? So you have to hustle. You have to go after it. And yeah, I think those are my biggest points. Really, you got to hustle and make sure it's a lifestyle for you.
Kelly, you've been so gracious with your time. I have one final question for you, and that is, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I mean, you've been with the Marlins for quite some time. You're a native of Florida. You're working sideline gigs for a Major League Baseball team. Is there something you'd like to do in 10 years? Have you even thought that far in advance, or all being said, pretty content with where you're at right now?
And no, I have not thought that far in advance. I've been trying to really stay true to the one day at a time thing, because I can get a little daunting. I love where I'm at. I'm from Miami. I was born and raised here. I love the opportunity that I have working with the Marlins, and they've been absolutely wonderful to me. I love being here. So right now, I honestly can't see myself anywhere else.
And really quickly, you are a Syracuse alum. Can you guarantee they're going to make a deep run in this tournament, maybe even win it all?
I wish I could guarantee that. Then maybe I would have actually filled out a bracket. But I'm always pulling for them. Go Cuse.
Kelly, this has been such a pleasure getting to talk to you about your career and all the different stories you have and the advice you have. Thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed it today.
Anytime. Thank you so much for having me.
That's Kelly Saco, Fox Sports reporter with the Marlins and host of other things, a Syracuse alum as well. This has been the latest edition of The Pulse with BP. Thanks to everybody for joining us. We'll see you next time.